Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland. Hello, hello. I know it is a Wednesday, but hey, Monday was Memorial Day. Yesterday I had a graduation to go to, all that good stuff. But we still bring you the content here on youtube.com/ESVN show. Subscribe. Put on push notifications. Share it with your friends, your family, people who you hate, and rate us 5 stars if you can, and say hello. I command you to my co-host and producer, Bradley Alstoff. Hello, Bradley.
Hello, everyone.
Yes,
I'm back.
You had some sporting events over the weekend.
I did. I was in the Heartland this weekend at the Indianapolis 500 with a bunch of my friends. It was fantastic. I was instantly propagandized into loving America and all that we stand for and all that we fought for.
Go Troops.
So now this is a patriotic show now.
I mean, aren't you propagandized by every other sporting event when you have to stand and sing?
This one was wild. This one was
even more so.
There were like promos about like, you know, Gold Star families and like how much the flag means, like multiple taps, America the Beautiful, the anthem.
Wow.
It was awesome. I was just like, sign me up and listen to me, babe. I'm ready to go. Send me to Ukraine.
They really,
I'll go.
they really ran the gamut there, so to speak.
Absolutely. We got everything.
Wow.
It's effective.
I mean, I can tell.
I know. I get it. I get it.
Completely different man.
But it was awesome. It was great. Had an amazing time. Wild race. Basically came into the last lap. There was a huge crash where a wheel from someone's car flew over the track and into the stadium,
Stands?
into the stands. Basically, it leveled a parked car. Fortunately, no one was hurt.
Oh my gosh!
Like,
I was about to say you guys
like,
almost got hit or something like that.
No. It was on the other side of the track, but like literally destroyed a parked car.
Well, I mean, if you
cool.
don't want some risk of bodily harm at a sporting event that you go to, then you don't really care about the crowd.
Full contact, even for the fans.
We are going to just run through kind of quick episode today. We're going to talk about the Stanley Cup finals. I know it says NHL finals, but hey, I'm character limited here. NBA finals as well. We're going to look at their odds, discuss how we think the series is going to go down. We will give a bit of a kind of RIP or eulogy to this Celtics team because it seems like big changes are going to be happening. Also want to talk about the Oakland A's probably leaving Oakland because their owner is a cheap Nepo baby, and as well as some NFL items, DeAndre Hopkins being cut by the Cardinals. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's start with the NBA, and then we'll move to the Stanley Cup. So NBA Finals matchup is set officially. We have the Denver Nuggets facing the 8-seeded Miami Heat.
Just as we all drew it up.
The Cinderella story of the Miami Heat. We'll get into it a bit, but I'll tip my hand. I think the Cinderella story ends versus the Nuggets. But let's put up the odds because clearly the sports book and the people that do this professionally seem to agree with me that the Nuggets should be the heavy favorites going into this series. But in terms of how it's going to go down, I didn't really remember this off the top of my head, but the last 4 NBA finals have ended in 6 games. Golden State won 4-2 versus the Suns. The Bucks beat the Suns in not versus
Celtics?
the Suns, versus the Celtics.
Yep.
The Bucks beat the Suns in 6. The Lakers also won in 6 in the bubble.
Against the Heat.
Yeah. And the Raptors won before that against the Golden State Warriors. And before that, I guess the Warriors swept the Cavs.
Yeah, that was the last sweep was the 2018.
And then before that 4-1, right?
Yeah.
And then before that, 4-3, because that was when the 7-game LeBron comeback.
Yeah, exactly.
But so 4-2 seems to be a decent bet, given how that has been the outcome over the last 2 or 4 years. But the Nuggets are minus 425, heavily favored going into that series. Miami Heat plus 320 to win. If you bet 100, you win 320, or I guess you come out with 320. Those are the odds for the Heat. But yeah, I mean, I cannot see the Heat winning the series, even though you could argue that they have a coaching advantage because Spoelstra is one of the three best coaches in the NBA. But Malone's been good, so I think you give the Heat the edge with Spoelstra, but that's basically it. They're both good 3-point shooting teams. The Heat just don't score as much at every level. Like, just Denver is one of the best scoring teams in the NBA. So that's gonna, I think, be really difficult for the Heat to overcome, even though they're so strong defensively and so well coached in that way. But another big storyline and thing to watch is Jokic versus Adebayo, the battle of the big men. And Jokic is going to get his. He's going to score. I would guess that he'll probably be the leading scorer in the series. He has the best odds to do so. And Adebayo is going to need to score to keep up with Jokic. But with that said, I'm probably going with Nuggets in 6 when it's all said and done. And those are the fourth best odds, actually. The best odds up here are the Nuggets winning 4-1 at plus 250. The Nuggets in 7 at plus 310. I guess those two odds are better because that means the Nuggets close it out at home in both of those instances. Then the third best odds, the Nuggets sweep, and then Nuggets 4-2 winning in Miami. In that instance, probably definitely at plus 400. That's probably what I'm taking.
4-2.
4-2. I mean, that's a very. I think that the home court advantage is not what it once was. The Heat have proven that. They proved that in the last series, and it's a pretty. I just can't see them getting swept, and I can't see the Heat. I could see them only winning one game, but I think they're going to put up a fight.
I'm saying Nuggets in 5. I think the one fundamental issue that the Heat are going to run into that Spoelstra, I think, is creative enough to try and troubleshoot against, but they do not in any way, shape, or form possess anyone on their team that has the size to account for the guys that they're going to be up against in Denver. Like, Bam Adebayo is their center mostly, and he is 6'9", 250.
Yeah.
Jokic is 6'11", 280, and probably the strongest guy in the league. He is gonna he has a 2-inch, 30-pound advantage on Adebayo, and there is not a 7-footer on that team. There is not a bigger man than Adebayo on the Heat, except for maybe Omer Yurtseven, who is a 12th man.
Which made it so dumb that, I mean, I don't know. I thought the Celtics could have used their size a little bit more against the Heat, but we'll put that aside for now.
Right. No, for sure. I think we saw that with the decision making with Robert Williams throughout the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, to say nothing of the fact that their best 3-point shooter on the team, Michael Porter Jr., also happens to be 6'10". Yep. And it's not even necessarily for that being an advantage by strength or height. It's like they don't have guys who can necessarily defend that release point. Like, Gabe Vincent is like six inches shorter than Michael Porter Jr.
I mean, let's just lay it out like this. The best 3 players on the Nuggets are Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. The best 3 players on the Heat are Jimmy Butler, Adebayo, and Vincent. Okay.
Or Caleb Martin, I guess, because Caleb Martin really did.
Or Caleb Martin.
Supernova in game 6.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So I don't know. Pick one. Either of those two guys. They're the last. They're the last drafted player. If you're drafting 6, or if you're taking looking at the 6 players that I just listed out there, the 3 best from each team. Like, if you were to draft the players that I mentioned in that order, the only player that you're taking above. That you're taking ahead probably
is Jimmy
of the big 3 on the Nuggets is Jimmy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
and the other thing I will say too is that the one I'm saying 5 because, one, I'm not discrediting the Heat's run. They literally beat 3 very good teams in the Bucks, Knicks, and Celtics, and came and fought hard and also took a bunch of punches. I mean, they looked relatively listless in the 3 games that they lost to the Heat in a row, and then came back and won handily in Boston. So like, they are a resilient team, they're a smart team, they're a well coached team, and they're especially given where they started this playoff run with a loss to the Hawks in the first play-in game. They're resilient and they're smart. I mean, they're resilient and they're like, there is talent there. Like, these guys who are of not nearly as in some cases, of course, Jokic was a second round pick, for example. But in a lot of cases, there's 9 undrafted guys on this team. They're playing well above their supposed pedigree of their draft position, certainly, and it's a testament to how to the scouting, to the player development for the Heat, and also to these players themselves. But they have not played a team that plays as good of team basketball as the Nuggets do. They like the Celtics, the Heat, and the Bucks, especially as we've seen them relative to how the Nuggets have been playing. There has not been they have not faced an opponent like this who have many ways to beat you. That the issue that they're going to have is it's one of those things similarly like I've been saying in terms of there are a few examples that I think would be parallel to what the Heat are most likely going to have to do. It's like facing the Warriors when it was just Steph Curry, or facing the Mavericks when it's Luka, or facing LeBron in the finals when he was basically averaging 40 a game because his entire team couldn't score except him. You have to basically account for the fact that their best player is going to most likely hit you with a 35-point triple-double every single game. It essentially, as we've seen throughout, if past his prologue, it's impossible to stop. A bad game for Jokic is 25, 12, and 13.
And then with that, paired with the scoring ability and upside, especially given, I don't know what Denver's ranking is in three-point percentage, but it's got to be up there.
I mean, Porter Jr. is one of, if not the most accurate three-point shooter in the league.
So that's going to be difficult
for this season.
And Hero is at best, I think, coming back game 3. That's the one thing that I thought might extend this to 6 games. I would agree with you in terms of outcome I would bet on in the most neutral sense would be the Nuggets winning in 5. But I am accounting for perhaps some scoring upside if Hero does return to extend it to 4-2. But either way, we both think the Nuggets are winning, and they're winning fairly convincingly.
My hesitation with Hero is that you're absolutely right. Like the game they played, the Heat and the Nuggets played twice in the regular season and lost both times, but they were pretty close affairs. But the second leading scorer for the Heat in those games was Tyler Hero. The offense that they have not had, the offensive piece that they have not had at all this postseason has been Tyler Hero. His shooting, his playmaking ability, and his ability to get into the paint and score. However, Hero also, if he's coming back in Game 3, he hasn't played basketball in 2 months.
Yes, that's a huge.
It's a real question.
It's a lot to ask of him.
Right, it's a real question to come back in Game 3 of the NBA Finals and be who Tyler Hero was in March, for example. So I think that remains to be seen. And also, of course, it's happened. Guys have come back from injury and played really well, no question. But I think it's still a variable. And I think for the Heat, it's a matter of, can we staunch the bleeding as much as we possibly can with knowing what Jokic is going to throw at us? And can we essentially dare the rest of the team? Can we dare Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Bruce Brown and other guys in that squad to beat us?
Yeah.
Can we let Jokic basically, can we do as much as we can to stop Jokic, know essentially the baseline of what he's going to do, and allow the other guys to potentially beat themselves? It's still a tall order because all of these guys are extremely high IQ players who can score.
Yeah. So you're sticking with it, Nuggets in 5?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm saying Nuggets in 6. There we have it. Those are the odds, and provided for us without a sponsorship by DraftKings.
Absolutely. Sorry, guys.
Hey, it's my sports book.
If the Heat if the Heat win, or if the Heat may even bring it to 7 games, I will consider this one of the most improbable, impressive, and unbelievable runs by any team in any sport
in history of sports.
To lose the play-in game and then win the next one, and then get to the NBA Finals as an 8 seed against the 1 seed, the 4 seed, and the 2 seed. I mean, the 1 seed, the 5 seed, and the 2 seed, and then potentially, if this happens, bring themselves to the brink of beating, I would say, easily the best team in the league. Like I think this goes down as like they're the team of destiny.
I don't see it happening.
Right, but if
yes.
if not, I think the Nuggets are who we thought they were, which is the best team in the league when healthy. And
God, am I an idiot?
And they have proved it.
I knew it, and I said it on this show that the 7th best odds or the 6th best odds or whatever was not enough. Was way too low or way too high, I should say, for the Nuggets, and I just forgot to place a bet myself. So hopefully you guys took my advice, even though this is not gambling advice, obviously. Before the finals, they were my pick.
And I took the Warriors and the Sixers.
Yeah,
that was mine. And with the Sixers winning the NBA Finals. Thanks, guys.
Let's. I mean, God, you should have just known that just because.
I'm never doing it again. I think there are multiple times
Doc
I said.
Rivers alone.
I think there are
maybe
that'll
times, free them.
I think there are multiple times I said I believe in them every year. This is the last year. Philly fans. Sorry.
Yeah.
Count me out. I'm done. I'm punching my card.
All right. Return to the Knicks fandom and start hating the Sixers.
That's
again,
right.
please.
Yeah. It's the 90s now.
Yep. Although then it's Allen Iverson, and then I kind of like them again.
Gosh.
Damn it.
The once I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
All right. Well, this series for the Stanley Cup Finals, I honestly think could go either way. This is very different.
I think it's very different.
Pretty positive that the Nuggets are going to pull it off. But for the Stanley Cup Finals, I just have no idea, because the other South Florida team that's on a Cinderella run, but this one seems a lot more sustainable, is the Florida Panthers. And like, just looking back at their road to the playoffs, I just want to reflect on this for a second. I mean, they were not going to even make the playoffs, but the Pittsburgh Penguins choked. They choked so badly. They lost to one of the team that literally just won the lottery, the Chicago Blackhawks, who were actively tanking. The Penguins lost, I think, multiple times and choked away their final seed in the playoffs. And this is just like an example. Okay, that dynasty's kind of in decline at this point. But the Panthers before that, they just underperformed in the regular season. They won the President's Trophy 2 years ago. Then they had, a big shift in their roster going into this year, partially because they were able to pull off a rare kind of big name player swap trade. It was an NBA style trade with to get Kachuk there, and that ended up being, of course, like the most incredible move for them, because Matthew Kachuk is arguably the clutchest forward in the entire NHL right now. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a fair case to make.
I think after scoring 3 straight overtime winners, it's hard to argue.
Hard to say otherwise. But like, they also just have other really good players. I mean, Carter Verhaeghe's played really well. Alexander Barkov is always solid and very good. And then, of course, they have Bob in net, and he's been really hot. And the key to Stanley Cup runs is when your goaltender gets hot at the right time. The thing about Florida, and then of course, they have. I'm blanking on the guy's name that he used to play on the Rangers.
Anthony Duclair,
who's been
maybe my favorite player in the postseason.
He's been awesome, but Bobrovsky has been hot, and that really is the perfect recipe for winning the Stanley Cup, at least getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. However, not that Hellebuck and Ottinger were playing at the level that Bob has been playing at recently, but the Golden Knights slayed 2 major goaltenders in their road to the Stanley Cup Finals. Hill, their goalie's been playing well as well, but really Vegas is all about scoring.
And also to like,
and they've been scoring amazingly, by the way,
for sure.
on in 5v5 hockey, not just on the power play, which is quite sustainable.
And a slight difference with the Knights too is that, well, first of all, as you said, they like. The Knights Jets series, I think, was a little bit more competitive than I anticipated, just because the Jets don't have a lot of like scoring ability, but obviously Hellebuck has always been and is an immensely talented goalie that can keep his team in games despite some anemic offense. However, I was just so impressed with how kind of silly in some respects they made Jake Ottinger look. It is not easy to make that guy.
Ottinger didn't look great.
It is not easy to shake that guy up, and they were just capitalizing on not only his very few vulnerabilities in net, but just rattling him by scoring early.
Mm-hmm.
They were just getting ahead of him. There was one game, I don't remember which game in the series, they scored 3 in the first period. Like, they were just jumping on him and not letting him get comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to do, but also I think I said this a few weeks ago. Besides Kachuk, in terms of guys who I just think really shine in the postseason, this was also clear when they made their run in their inaugural season to the Cup. But Jonathan Marchessault is just a phenomenal playoff hockey player.
He's been playing out of his mind.
He just knows when, like, he's one of those guys where it just seems like he almost like intangibly knows when to rise to the occasion, like when to be in the right spots, when to shoot, and when to like get hot. And he's super hot right now.
Yeah, and I mean, Eichel's played very well, solid, player. He on both ends of the ice. I mean, I wanted Eichel on the Rangers badly, but they weren't trading him in the East.
And I mean, I almost forgot about Eichel because a lot of the great stuff he's been doing is distributing.
Yeah,
he's been passing like an amazing,
very unselfish,
just making fantastic reads to get guys open and to also almost pass guys open. It's been amazing to watch him in this role because he's not necessarily been needed to be like the dominant scorer.
Well, I mean, that's what's it's paid dividends for Barbashev as well.
And Chandler Stevenson too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't think I think that's probably more on the power play because I think Stevenson centers the other line. But yeah, I mean, and then William Karlsson has been the other what we're saying here is the Knights are a deeper team. The Knights are a deeper team.
100%. They have a lot of talent.
And that is going to be the story of the series, but I have no idea how it goes. Are we, the best player in the series is probably going to be, is probably Kachuk.
Yes, he is. I think he is the best player in the series.
It depends on how Bob plays, but he might be number 2. But then the rest
Knights, I'd probably say.
are Golden Knights right now. And so...
Because Verhaeghe, for example, is a great scorer, but he's streaky.
Exactly. And I just think the rest of the team, I mean, they're just deeper. And, oh, God, I almost forget, just I'm looking at their lines right now, and they've got some decent defensive pairings, but at the same time, the Knights probably could be defending a little bit better than they have. But I don't know. I really don't know. Let's put the odds back up here because it's essentially equal. The reason that Vegas has the advantage is just because they have home ice advantage. But the Golden Knights are minus 125 to win the series. The Panthers are plus 105. The top, the odds of it going to 7 games with the Knights winning are the worst odds, right? Or the lowest odds at plus 425. Then at plus 475, the Panthers winning in 6, that would be on their home ice. And 4-2 for the Knights winning away, plus 500, 4-1 for the Panthers, plus 550. And then the Panthers winning in 7 is plus 550. I think I'd be very tempted to take that bet. I would not be shocked if we're not talking, I don't think, about a series that ends in 5 games. I think this is going to 6 or 7, and it depends on how you think it's going to shake out in terms of outcome. I'm curious. I honestly want to hear what you have to say, Bradley, because I keep going back and forth. Right now, I want to say the Knights in 7. Right now, that's what I want to say, but it's really hard for me to say that with Kachuk on the other side. He's the ultimate clutch player to a point that we rarely even see in hockey. It's so much easier to identify these clutch players making incredible shots in basketball or, quarterbacks making game-winning drives in football, but the bounce of the puck is so difficult and it's almost so much about opportunity. It's harder to spot those guys that create their own opportunities, and Kachuk is that guy.
I think it's really, this is harder because it's a discussion. It's the tension between, do I think a deeper team will win as a series progresses, or will the team with what I would say is the more defined star power, despite being a lower seed, will that win out? Because as you were just saying, to me, the two players that at their peak, at their peak abilities, and when they are executing exactly what they need to execute, it's Kachuk and Bobrovsky easily for me, especially with how they've been playing the last few months. I mean, Bobrovsky has basically been standing on his head, as the goaltender, and they've won every kind of way basically. I mean, they kicked the Canes' asses in the conference finals, and there was one game where it was 1-0. Like,
but I want to push back because I don't think they kicked their asses. I don't. I think that those games were a lot closer than they appeared on. I'm talking myself into the Knights, by the way.
But I guess what I'm saying is they swept them, right?
They did, but it was the closest sweep ever. I mean, the game. I think the goal differential was much closer than previous sweeps and stuff. Like the games were closer than it appears.
To me that the sheer fact that one, despite it being so close, the Canes could not take one of those games from them, and two, that even in games where there was not a lot of scoring going on, they won the goalie battle. I think that reflects a little bit more sturdiness than them needing to win 5-0 to win every game.
Yeah.
Like they did if the sweep was that close, I think it's a testament to their fortitude that they didn't slip one game to the Canes.
That's what I'm saying. They're clutch as hell. So it's difficult for me to pick against them, but I think I'm going to go Knights in 7.
So the one thing for me though, the reason why I think a tiebreaker for me with the Knights is twofold. There are players that were still on that cup run from 5 years ago, like Marchessault. And I think there is something to be said for having actual experience playing in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And two, to me, the potential X factor in the series in terms of not only just playmaking, but what we might be seeing and that we haven't seen as much as maybe we've expected in the entire playoff run. I think the X factor is Eichel. Mm-hmm. If Eichel gets hot and starts scoring, I think it's going to be really hard for the Panthers to beat him.
Yeah.
Like if the Knights continue to play the way that they have been playing and Eichel starts scoring more too, I think it's going to be really hard to beat them. I think this will be close, but I think for those reasons, like cup experience and Eichel, I think the Knights will win in 7.
And we'll see. I mean, okay, I'm glad we're in agreement on that. I mean, I want to go back because then it's like, it's hard to say if Bobrovsky just decides not to let anything in, then, you could totally see the Panthers winning it. But I'm looking at the defensive pairings for the Florida Panthers. And besides Ekblad, like I know Forsling's had a good playoffs and he's a good player, but I think their top pairing is very good. There's going to be some struggles defensively, I would imagine, against this incredibly stacked 5v5 hockey team in the Golden Knights. So I think we're on the same page there, Bradley.
Yeah, and the only difference that's been kind of interesting that I haven't really kind of plumbed the depths of is that the other thing I was going to say that the difference between the two teams besides depth is that with the Panthers, it's like Bobrovsky's. It's obviously been the Bobrovsky show, and with the Knights, it's interesting that they started out with Brossoit in goal, and Aiden Hill has been kind of taking over now. So there's been a little bit. It's not even that it's necessarily a knock against them. I just thought it was interesting that they sort of had more of a platoon where like Bobrovsky is the guy for the Panthers, and they're not going to really give that up. But Hill has also been playing really well recently, so I don't think it's necessarily a knock. And Brossoit also played decently, so if he does get chased, I think it's good. Like they at least have two pretty capable, good goalies that. Whereas I don't think Bobrovsky will either get chased or have the ability to get chased. I think these games will be close, and B, I just don't think he necessarily needs the depth. Whereas the Knights is probably helpful that they have two goalies that are plus goalies.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think what we saw in a lot of these teams that didn't possess the depth, like for example, the Oilers, like when things weren't working for them, it wasn't because McDavid and Draisaitl are playing poorly. It's like McDavid and Draisaitl are playing amazing, but Stuart Skinner literally can't stop a puck. And then we put Jack Campbell in, and also he kind of can't stop a puck either.
Yeah, well, they didn't even turn to Jack Campbell in that series, which was insane. But
despite Skinner just not playing well,
that was a coaching malpractice.
So I think honestly, them having that versatility is a nice thing to have if one of them is getting sort of attacked by the Panthers. And the Panthers, to their credit, the hard thing for me is that they have been aggressive and they're hungry. Like they play, they're hungry and they play hard. Like they are. Speaking of some of the depth or the defensive pairings or these guys aren't that great in terms of they're not going to score a whole lot of goals, but Duclair is a dirty work guy who just knows how to make the right play and also kind of just like mop up the like shit that is out there on the ice.
Yeah.
And another guy who does that very well is Radko Gudas on the Panthers, who just also likes to literally put people in the dirt. Like he hits guys out of their fucking pads. He hits them so hard. Like there are guys that are just like going to set the tone in this series on the Panthers as well.
All right. Well, actually, all right. To you'll say Panthers, or you're saying Knights in 7. I'll say them in 6, just to switch it up a little bit. All right. So that's
I'm gonna regret picking the Knights, but it's okay.
No, me too. Well, of course. And then Kachuk's just gonna go beast mode. Yeah. But speaking earlier a little bit about the Celtics, I want to touch on this before we move on to a few our other stories. But what's next for the Boston Celtics? Because there has been a lot of discussion about Joe Mazzulla and his inexperience in this series. And I don't know everything about the Celtics. I'm a fan watching, and I don't follow the team in the way I do my teams. But that seemed pretty obvious from the jump that the Celtics were pretty outmatched when it comes to in-game adjustments, timeouts that they didn't call to set up plays. To be honest, the overplaying of certain veteran players like Horford as a way to substitute or supplement some of the coaching inadequacies or inexperience from Mazzulla. But they let the Heat, or not the Heat, they let the Hawks hang around way too long. That seemed to make it a little queasy for the Celtics.
If the Hawks were capable of inbounding a ball, they would have potentially forced a Game 7.
And I found that bizarre, and it was a miracle that they were able to win 3 straight and force a Game 7 at all. But in this Game 7, it was a pathetic attempt. Like, I didn't realize that this was the lowest scoring game for the Celtics in their entire season with 84 points. And that in and of itself is deeply concerning, because smart basketball people who know more than me were talking about how, I think it might have been The Ringer, how the Heat switched on pick and rolls like a crazy number of times because they essentially had Mazzulla's game plan in their back pocket. And that's completely unacceptable going into a Game 7 where you're going to the NBA Finals. So, do you think that Mazzulla survives? I don't think so.
So I think there's a few things where I feel on one hand I feel some sympathy for Mazzulla because he was not supposed to be the head coach of this team going into the season. He's
thrust into the role.
Yeah, he was thrust into the role after a pretty nebulous controversy that was basically never resolved or arbitrated properly. That was hanging over them the entire season after, and especially combined with both the coaching staff and the players need to basically swallow this pill of our coach that led us to the NBA Finals last year is not here anymore, and now we're in the hands of a 33-year-old assistant. And this is a lot. This is not easy. It's really rare and really difficult for any coach to make it to the NBA Finals, let alone a first-year guy who's as old as some of these players who literally played Jimmy Butler in college. Lost both times, by the way. So with all that being said, though, he showed how green he was, though, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He was pretty stubborn and pretty risk-averse in actually changing anything to what he was putting out there. There were many times where it was so clear, at least upon watching, that some of the defensive assignments for Robert Williams were far more advantageous to Williams than just throwing Al Horford out there. Horford, who has been an amazing player for a really long time, I think he turned 38 2 weeks ago, and he could not hit the broadside of a barn with a shot.
And that just shows you're insecure a little bit about not having a sort of presence like his, a veteran presence on the floor, which you can supplement with coaching in the right way.
But like his inability to see that there were certain advantageous matchups for Robert Williams as opposed to Horford because of Williams' switching ability and length, and also his inability to see that like it's one thing to kind of see where things go, in terms of like, oh, okay, they're going on a run, let's just see if we can bounce back. But it's another thing when like Jimmy Butler and Grant Williams go face to face, and all of a sudden you don't take that guy out after a 24-9 run, or not even necessarily it's to say nothing of taking him out. Call a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
Call a timeout.
Get your team in order.
Because the Heat are outscoring you by 15 in this quarter, and you're not resetting anything.
He has this like anxiety about stopping he does not utilize. He needs to be more hands-on. I mean, and that's I think what seems clear, both in game plan and in like in-game adjustments.
He seemed paralyzed by the need to make decisions,
right?
To make significant and like either personnel or schematic decisions that were different than what they were going in with. And I do not blame. And the one thing I will say for Missoula that is not out of his control, they were shooting so poorly for the majority of the series, and that's not really on Missoula. They were like in the last.
It is though he can't get his guys open because the Miami defensive structure was so incredible. Although like Jaylen Brown played like shit.
But I will say in Game 7. They missed a lot of open threes. They were 0 for 10 from 3 in the first quarter. That's like if you're getting 10 shots up, you're getting at least a few good looks. And they weren't just missing like in and out of the rim. They were missing badly. The shots were, I was noticing just by watching with my friend, like the misses were caroming off the back of the rim that it was so hard to rebound because they were basically bouncing back to the 3-point line.
Yeah.
They were missing horribly.
And look, Jason Tatum, he rolled his ankle really early on in the game. I get it. But he still was playing through it. You've got to find a way to get him some open looks. And
he can't be the only option. He can't be the only guy who
they're paying Jaylen Brown
something.
Way too much money for him to be the only option.
For someone who is supposed to be receiving a upwards of $200 million deal, he simply could not have played worse.
No, he drove his price down. He was 8 for 23.
He was awful in the last few games.
And he turned the ball over a bunch of times too.
He could not secure the ball, and he literally could not make a shot. He missed free throws. He missed layups. He could not score.
It sucks because I mean I actually I don't know why like when he's good I like him as a player, but
they are both great players that sort of do similar things. But I mean one is better than two. But one is better than two in terms of when they're firing on all cylinders. It's glaring when it's just Tatum.
Yeah. So I mean, let alone it's just they're. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but they didn't even adjust for Caleb Martin and how like to try to take him away because he had a great Game 7 too. But
he was making the other thing with Missoula that I don't fully fault him for is that the Heat, and again this is not to discredit them because this is what you need to do when you're a team when you're an 8 seed like the Heat. These guys were volcanic. I mean, Caleb Martin was making like one of one impossible shots the entire game. He was, I think, 9 for 14 or something for 29 points and 10 rebounds. He was getting every single thing he shot up. And the issue with that is, sure, that's an amazing game. If you go 0 for 10 from the first quarter and that's happening, you are guaranteed to lose.
Yep.
Like a guy can get hot, but you have to respond.
Yes.
And if you can't respond, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Like and I think that was the most serious disparity I saw is that Missoula lacked a counterpunch.
Yeah.
For everything. He did not know how to reset anything against Eric Spoelstra. And Spoelstra, to his credit, good coaches play with their food. Mm-hmm. They take advantage of these guys. Mm-hmm. That's why Belichick is so good. That's why Bill Belichick, for example, is so good at dining out on rookie coaches.
Yeah,
because he knows that they're risk averse. He knows they're a little scared to face him, and he knows that he can unveil his bag of tricks because they're not going to want to change what they think might work. And it's the same thing with Spoelstra against Missoula.
Yep.
Missoula tried hard, but he was thrust into a hard situation to begin with, and then he faced the best coach in the league in the conference finals. with something to prove.
Yeah, so a lot of changes happening soon for the Boston Celtics. We shall see, but
I'm curious. I think it's the mistake I think they might have made is by, kind of confirming that they were going to give a deal to Mazzulla, like promoting him from interim to head. Because I feel like if I were them, I would have maybe just wanted to see how the postseason played out before offering him a contract.
Is he Brad Stevens' guy or something like that?
I mean, it's hard to say because I think the tough thing was that Will Hardy got hired by the Jazz, and I think if he didn't, it would have been pretty clear that Hardy would have been the guy for the Celtics. And I think so. The combo of Udoka obviously leaving the team, and then Hardy getting another head coaching job made it a little more difficult to suss out who it would be. But I think if I'm the Celtics, I'm probably really curious about what we should potentially do with our head coaching spot, despite even the deal, even if it means paying him out a little bit. And 2, I'm really thinking about what to do with Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
It's a lot of money to pay these, because at the end of the day,
and they might maybe they'll package him with picks for Damian Lillard or something like that.
I mean, I think I would look at
get some actual consistent shooting.
I would look at options for value for Jaylen Brown because at the end of the day, I don't think he's a bad player. It's just I fear that he might be too. It might be too samey to have two guys who basically have the same exact skill set.
Yeah.
They're lengthy wings. They're lengthy two-way wings who can shoot and defend. Like, you have that in Tatum. And I think Tatum showed that he's better.
Oh, definitely.
And if you can also...
It's always been the case.
There's a release, hopefully or ideally the Celtics could find a release valve that's not basically a similar, almost mirror player of Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
And
I mean, look, I don't know what Embiid is going to want to do if he actually wants out of Philly. I don't think that they would trade him to Boston. I doubt it. But it's they need somebody big and like a physical defender on that team that can give them a bit more of an identity when it comes to these playoff grinding wins.
And a second option that's not redundant, a second option that's a little bit of a different flavor, and also potentially avoiding paying those two guys who, as I've said, multiple times, kind of are redundant to one another, potentially just by the way that these things are structured, these contracts are structured, and where both Tatum and Brown are at in their career. You're looking at paying both of these guys $50 million a year, potentially.
Right. That's not sustainable.
That's concerning if I'm a Celtics fan, just because that's your future. That is the future of the team if that happens entirely.
Yeah. I don't think they can do it. All right, let's speaking of the future of a team here, we're actually going to rarely tap into some MLB news. Just because, I mean, yet another instance here of a billionaire cheaping out and trying to get the taxpayers to pay for their own stadium at the expense of fans. The Oakland A's are looking more and more likely to leave Oakland and be the second Oakland franchise after the Raiders to go to Las Vegas. Now, I mean, the A's have been struggling. They've been struggling in terms of attendance as well. But the problem here is not the attendance and the fact that people in Oakland don't want to go to their stadium, which is falling apart. That's not it. It is the owner trying to be a cheap skate. And he's not really, frankly, that interested in winning. But the updates are that 2 weeks ago or so, the A's came to some agreement with Bally's, right? Which I thought was having some real financial issues, but I don't even know.
Bally's, unfortunately, is a pretty significant regional monopoly in broadcasting for baseball. Like, they basically have the rights to every team in the Midwest, and they're just kind of trying to corner as much of the market share as they can for broadcasting for MLB teams.
Right, but they had some financial issues recently.
I'm sure that hasn't stopped.
They filed for bankruptcy. Yeah, sure. Okay, they filed for bankruptcy, claiming $8 billion in debt in the Southern District of Texas, and is negotiating. That was That was a few weeks ago, around the same time as this.
I was like, help me, I'm poor.
So these are the kinds of corporations that they're dealing with right now. But this would be to build a new ballpark along the Las Vegas Strip. And the vote is supposed to happen in mid-June at the MLB owners meeting in New York. I think they should be deciding about the relocation then. But the problem here is that John Fisher, who is the heir to the Gap fortune, right? The Gap clothing store.
Nice.
Total, like, Kendall Roy situation where he...
Hey, I'm wondering about the team in Las Vegas, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I can't even imitate our poor sweet prince right now. I'm so sad about the whole situation. But regardless, like, I mean, he doesn't know what he's doing. He inherited all of this money, and he wants to use hundreds of billions of dollars in public money to help him build his new stadium. And the people of Oakland, the legislature there, the city council, whatever the body is, said no. And at least in terms of like where we stand right now, the Nevada legislature is considering it. The Clark County, Nevada, they're currently undergoing a process where they see these proposals and stuff. But the stadium would only be 30,000 people, so it would not be a massive upgrade in terms of seating. It would open in 2028, and currently the lease for the A's in Oakland expires in 2024. So there could be a 4-year gap where the A's are playing in a different area of the country or in a different area in Oakland, as if the conditions for the ballpark for the Coliseum were not already horrible enough. They would have to try to find a way to negotiate with the city to let them stay in the Coliseum for 4 more years. And I would imagine people are going to be really pissed if Fisher actually goes through with this and moves the team to Las Vegas. And so this would be hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. Did I say hundreds of thousands? Jesus. Hundreds of millions in public money going to the stadium. And, you know, I mean, this is an example, again, of this hostage situation that billionaire owners have created with certain cities. If you're not going to pay our ransom, we're going to leave. In Buffalo, Kathy Hochul, with a little sweetener, I believe, for her husband, who owns some sort of food distribution company, caved and said, hey, I will give you Buffalo Bills hundreds of millions or whatever it was for you to stay here in New York and not move to Houston or wherever the place is going to give you a sweetheart deal. And it's just a total middle finger to the fans, particularly Oakland A's fans, who have such a storied history in that city, that because the city council or the state isn't giving us exactly what we want in this ransom hostage situation, we're going to leave and find a better deal. And it's because we're not truly interested in serving fans. We're not interested in winning even, because in Fisher's case, he's as cheap as it gets. We're mostly interested in making money. And there's a huge class of owners in every sports league that are like this, but it's much more pronounced in the United States, where our sports teams are almost exclusively run by billionaires, and there is very little public ownership besides, say, like the Packers, where they have recourse in these situations. And these teams are cultural and regional staples. The people that invest their heart and money should have some sort of like stake in this that could prevent this kind of thing.
And
but we don't.
And it's very tough. And I've been banging this drum a little bit, but this is not new. You know, David Roth over at Defectors talked about this a lot. The folks at Tipping Pitches have talked about this a lot. Owners in the MLB specifically have essentially been engaged in a, you know, what I would generously call either like
a money laundering scheme.
Yeah, like a coordinated efforts of soft collusion or a capital strike to basically be like, hey, we'll make money hand over fist because of TV rights and revenue sharing agreements. So it actually doesn't really matter if our teams are good whatsoever, or if we keep our profit margins, or if we keep our margins so skeletally thin in terms of like what we pay for our rosters relative to the amount of money that we receive regardless of how much we're paying into our rosters. Like, for example, the A's or the Cincinnati Reds, another team that's not doing that great and also small market, doesn't have a huge or enormous payroll. Doesn't matter. If anything, based on how some of the more recent projections for teams throughout the entire league have looked, based on like earnings reports from like the most recent quarter or recent year or whatever league year, it's actually shown that if your payroll is lower, you're gonna make more money.
Of course.
Because your overhead is way lower, you can just basically reap all of the benefits without having to pay for players.
I mean, this is a huge problem with baseball.
It should be illegal.
They don't have a salary floor. Other leagues have salary floors.
Right.
The NHL, I mean, the Coyotes are disgusting, but they at least, like, there is some kind of payroll minimum that they have to engage in. The NFL, I think, is really good about it, honestly, compared to other leagues. The NBA too.
The MLB are like the biggest perpetrators.
There's like those
it's
three,
criminal.
and then tons of layers of shit, and then Major League Baseball.
And this is happening to pro players while there is literally, for every team, a dedicated underclass of other players who are trying their hardest to escape the feeder system to get into this shit system.
Yeah,
it's like it is this entire like subjugating ecosystem of fucking players over at the expense of just making record profits for these guys who are now not only don't have to, but are making a concerted effort to be bad so they can make more money.
Yeah, and to be honest, there's no incentive, to Bradley's point, unless you're like this. You're a team that is in a big market and you have an owner that's interested in it. To even when you're in a big market, I mean, the Wilpons engaged in this in some fashion. They were in
the biggest market, and they were dumbass cheapskates who were still paying a player millions of dollars every year because they were like, we could give him an annuity.
Yeah.
Who has been retired for 20 years, and their other biggest claim to fame, other than that, was getting swindled by Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
Like it does. It
well, I mean, that's kind of that fits into the larger thesis.
It literally doesn't matter. Like the market almost doesn't matter. As you said, like for example, the San Diego Padres weren't necessarily the most I wouldn't say necessarily the most vibrant market because they're competing with LA, San Francisco as well, but their owner is willing to pay through his nose to get Juan Soto and Xander Bogaerts and Corbin Burns, like all these guys. He's willing to pay top dollar for them and trade for them because he wants to win.
Yeah.
There are like 7 teams that want to win in the MLB.
Yeah, you can see that's an example of a smaller market where you don't get to have maybe your 7th yacht in this instance. You can just maybe have 6 and sacrifice it a little bit for the rest of for your customer base, for your fan base. But for guys like this, as you say, Bradley, the customer base are the cable channels and the streaming sites, so they're going to make sure that they air their games, and they're they realize that they could maybe jack up ticket prices if they need to supplement people not coming to the games, as is happening with the A's. And the A's are, look, I think the Raiders are a storied NFL franchise, even though they've been dysfunctional for the past few decades, but just because of their aura and because of Mark Davis and everything like that, or Al Davis. But the A's are a storied MLB franchise. I mean, they are a storied franchise. So to do this because of the whims of billionaire greed, like billionaires, buck up, fund your own stadium, or sell the team. And I don't even know if it's fully realistic to say that they're going to fund their own stadium, because right now there's just way too many juicy incentives. And even teams like I just gave that example of Buffalo, just to keep teams in cities, there are going to be a lot of states that give them at least something. But this total huckster is trying to move a storied franchise just to get a sweeter deal. And he has earned nothing, no kind of credibility on that front, given how he's run the A's into the ground.
But specifically, and specifically to the A's point, Dorsey's in studio today, our noted Northern California correspondent. He was saying, as an A's fan himself, that like it's not just like this. John Fisher has been desperately trying to pawn this team off for years, like wanting to move them to Fresno or move them to Stockton, move them to Seattle, move them to Vegas. Like he is desperate to not only offload this team and shirk and fuck over a devoted, passionate fan base that has endured some of the most like penny pinching, bloodless, analytical, sabermetric front office management that, of course, with Billy Beane was super innovative, super revolutionary, but ultimately led to a philosophy of we will farm
austerity.
We will farm, we will cultivate good, promising young players, and the second that they reach their maximum value as an asset, we will offload them so they can be talented elsewhere, and we'll start from scratch over and over and over again. They have done basically everything from an ownership perspective, from a front office perspective, to keep this team bad. And it's been a slap in the face for A's fans as they live in Oakland, as they attend games at the Coliseum, and now for his last hurrah, John Fisher is going to want to take this team to a place that they pretty much don't want them, and to be rivals again with Mark Davis, the other guy who wanted to fight over real estate in Oakland until moving to Las Vegas as well. He's a piece of shit, and you know what? As much as it must be sad for A's fans, good riddance to John Fisher.
What do you think John Fisher's political affiliation is? Just guessing. I want you to guess.
I have a feeling that if Trump or DeSantis wins, he'll probably become the ambassador to the Vatican or something.
Yeah. He religious ambassador. What did they give?
The Holy See.
What did they give to the guy from Kansas to get him to shut up about voter suppression?
I think it was Sam Brownback.
Ambassador to God or whatever.
Yeah. Probably the ambassador to the Holy See.
Yeah, gotcha.
That'll be John Fisher's next job after he gets run out of Las Vegas.
He donated nearly $9 million to oppose Barack Obama in 2012 to a political action committee.
You're
and he is...
I wonder why. I wonder what his thoughts on Barack Obama were.
After college, Fisher worked in the mailroom at the Republican National Committee. You know, Son of
the Gap heir.
He just
nose to the grindstone, John Fisher. I started the mailroom in the RNC with just a simple millions of dollars fortune from the Gap.
I mean, to be honest, not to bring back Succession for the second time, but this very much reeks of like a much more pretentious version of when Roman had to dress up as like the cartoon character and do the management training.
Go to the training.
He really learned. He learned the hard Scrabble work at working at the RNC office. Yeah, and worked as a fundraiser for then President Ronald Reagan and Vice President George H.W. Bush.
I love this guy.
What an icon.
Class act.
So fuck off. You suck, John Fisher. Truly, truly eat shit. That's all.
Yeah.
With that said, we have one more story and then we're going to wrap up.
Right.
So I want to touch on this because it's important. Talking about dysfunctional franchises. DeAndre Hopkins, cut by the Arizona Cardinals, who are openly tanking. I mean, allegedly. Let's just be real here, though. Because, so the Cardinals cut DeAndre Hopkins, who's their only good player left, basically. Basically, that's it. I mean, they traded down and were able to accumulate a first-round pick next year. They traded with the Houston Texans. Clearly, they're going all in on next year. Caleb Williams is coming out in the draft. Supposedly, you know, I've seen him play. To my untrained eye, he looks like one of the best quarterback prospects I've seen in years, and everyone seems to be saying that.
And interestingly enough, too, in the sense they received the first rounder from Houston while not giving up their own. So potentially, if they're as bad as I think they might be, they might have two picks in the top 5 next year.
They traded down from 3, and the Texans traded back up from like 12 or 11 or something
for Will Anderson.
So for Will Anderson, which was a dumb trade by them, honestly. But the Cardinals moved back down and then moved back up to get Paris Johnson. But either way, they have 2 first-round picks next year.
So they could be looking at, theoretically, based on however the draft shakes out, you know, Drake May from North Carolina is another top quarterback. If there is somehow some way that they have like the first pick and the third pick, they could be looking at like pick of the litter, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Like, I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's so transparent that they're like, we should suck as much as humanly possible and just literally tank for 2024, basically.
And I saw this was made by Chris Sims on Pro Football Talk. You know, I listen to that show every day. And he made the point that there's been, since like the incompetent Cardinals were not even able to get a 7th or a 6th round pick in return for their best player, just had to cut him because they were too cheap to cut him post June 1 when they would have the ability to split their cap hit between 2 years. Now they have to take on the full $22.6 million. It'll be off their books, and yes, they'll take their medicine this year, but they're clearly not interested in being competitive. When this was happening, there were all these leaks to the media about how the Cardinals were unhappy with DeAndre Hopkins because he sat out the final 2 meaningless games of last year and didn't want to get injured. I got my issues with DeAndre Hopkins for taking PEDs. I think that's crap. But that saving himself in a meaningless season makes no sense. And the only person that would be leaking this is clearly ownership, because the GM and the coach Bradley are two different, are new. Yep. So why would they have resentment about the previous about this? Again, Sims made this point. Why would they have resentment about the previous year where DeAndre Hopkins wasn't playing at the end of the year? Right? It's got to be from from ownership, which means that's trash. That's just a vendetta against DeAndre Hopkins.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Michael
Bidwell.
I have to take issue with this, because are you telling me that Michael Bidwell, one of Brett Kavanaugh's good friends, would have an issue with one of his players, a prominent, successful black man, potentially asserting his will as a worker?
Yeah, I don't
think so.
Yeah, that does stretch credulity.
That seems odd.
But this is the same guy that just released a statement because there was a whistleblower from the Cardinals that came out and said, that they may have been cheating and communicating with Steve Keim illegally or against, the rules of the league, which then in response, they released something about how he's an unstable character and is having a troubled relationship with his daughter or something like that as a way to smear his character. This is the way that Michael Bidwell does business. He is a smear merchant. He's also the guy that makes his players pay for meals at the facility and padlocks doors or whatever so people can't use the facility off hours, which is that part's alleged. But the other first part was in the NFLPA survey of players about what the worst workplace was in the NFL. And it was by far the Commanders and by far the Cardinals. And I think the Cardinals might have even had an edge in that way because they're cheap. They don't care about their players. They'll do dirty tactics like this, like putting out smears about DeAndre Hopkins and his competitive level in the media to cover their own ass. And then they'll openly tank for a player in such an unsubtle way that I can only pray that Jonathan Gannon is competent enough, and I think he could be one and done because he's that big of a clown, to win them a few more games so they get number 2 overall, because I do not want to see this kind of crap rewarded. It would be one thing if a team was tanking and they overall treat their players with respect and treat their employees with certain levels of respect and actually invest in them and invest in a winning culture. But for Caleb Williams, I don't want him going to the Cardinals.
Something happened with the other first overall pick quarterback, and it wasn't good.
Exactly, and then that's the other situation. We're talking treating their players badly. And the other thing that's also, as much as we make fun of Kyler Murray and that homework clause, the fact that they put that in there is not protecting your player.
As if no one would comb through it, as if no one would leak that detail, as if they wouldn't think that would piss off their supposed franchise quarterback. It's the blind leading the blind in Arizona.
Exactly. The fact they couldn't make that implicit, we're just listing dysfunction over the past
they're clowns
18 months,
and also not only with Kyler signing Kyler to an extension where they clearly think he has trouble focusing, and also it seemed, by all accounts and by what we were watching last year, absolutely miserable under the tutelage of Cliff Kingsbury. Speaking of Kingsbury, they signed that idiot to an extension after 5 seasons of basically doing the same thing over and over and over again to lackluster results, and then fired the guy so he could get paid $20 million to go sit in Phuket for however long.
I'm sure he had offset language too, but he's like, I'm going to take the year off, buddy. I guess he's going to USC, but they still his college, I think he's going to USC. Can you check that for me, actually?
But that guy said one-way ticket to Phuket, please. I'm dining out on my firing money until it runs out, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they're still gonna if there's offset language in that, they're still gonna have to pay a good amount of that because USC quarterbacks coach or whatever he is not.
So he's coming on as an assistant coach at USC under Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, so he'll still be getting that paper, and like he can get
Happy
some more
trails,
modern
Cliff
houses.
Kingsbury. You did the right thing.
Yeah,
I would if I were him and I got $20 million to get fired by the Cardinals, I'd go from Phoenix to Phuket too. But the other hilarious thing about this whistleblower report from former Cardinals exec Terry McDonough is like the actual details that are involved here. Is that McDonough accused Cardinals owner Michael. This is from an Arizona Central piece from April. McDonough accused Cardinals owner Michael Bidwell of gross misconduct, including cheating, discrimination, and harassment. The grievance includes an allegation that both McDonough and former Cardinals head coach Steve Wilkes were coerced by Bidwell into using burner phones to communicate with Steve Keim, former GM of the Cardinals, as you mentioned, during Keim's 5-week suspension in the summer of 2018 after pleading guilty to extreme DUI in Chandler, Arizona. So, like, Bidwell was like, we simply cannot abide by not talking to Steve Keim, our idiot GM who was extremely drunk while driving a vehicle. Take these flip phones and text Steve.
Yeah. I mean,
we absolutely cannot last 35 days without talking to our GM who was super drunk behind the wheel of a car.
And who was in treatment. Like,
we got to make sure he's in the loop.
It's just, yeah. And then when you said that thing about Kingsbury getting the extension, it also reminded me, another wrinkle to this is that Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray have the same agent. Did you know this?
Oh, I think I might have heard. I forgot, but I think I remember now.
They were up for extensions at the same time, and instead of being like, actually, this brand of football has looked kind of bad, and we've flamed out at the end of the year every single time because Kyler Murray seems to only be able to play loose and with effectiveness when the game is wide open. But when it comes to these clutch moments, the stupid ticky-tack college offense that he's installed in Kingsbury and Kyler Murray not really being very clutch. I mean, we saw that in the playoffs. Like, let's reward those guys.
Yeah, you know what?
Let's extend them both.
Yeah.
And now they want to tank for Caleb Williams. Let's not let this get rewarded. This is trash. This is not a way that one of these franchises should be running themselves in the most profitable sports league in the country. I wish Bidwell would sell, but short of that, I'm praying if they do get the first overall pick or find a way to get the first overall pick through trade of some assets, that Caleb Williams says, I am not playing for you. I am not signing an entry-level contract. If you draft me, I will sit out a year. I'm going to pull an Eli Manning. I am not going to play for the Arizona Cardinals because he has the kind of NIL money, the kind of capital. I mean, he's been at USC. They're paying him a ton of cash over there. Through NIL deals. He should, speaking of USC and Cliff Kingsbury, this is so full circle. But anyway, he should sit out. I would hope that he does that, but I can't also begrudge a guy if he chooses to go to a team that wants him and wants to draft him first overall. Long story short, going to be a rough year for the Arizona Cardinals, and this has the Houston Texans feel going into last year, and the Houston Texans got second overall too, and I'm praying for the same outcome for the stupid Cardinals.
Well, and the Texans got this second overall due to a huge assist from former Bears coach Lovie Smith, because he was like, you know what, you want me to lose this game and fire me? Fuck you.
Yeah,
not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. And
you want to hear my prediction?
And then he gave his old team,
the
Bears.
He secured the bag for the Bears.
Yeah. All right. Tell me your prediction.
My prediction is that the Cardinals go 3-14. And at one point in the season, Jonathan Gannon is going to have a press conference where he delivers an extremely tortured and multi-layered metaphor that is basically where he blames his players for his poor efforts as a coach. I guarantee he's going to.
He seems like the biggest douchebag ever.
I just think he's going to say something about we need an ant farm mentality. Like, we need like a beehive mentality where, you know, everyone like works in lockstep with one another. We don't have that. I think he's got some real dipshit energy. That's gonna come out when we actually get to hear him speak after every game.
I mean,
and I can't wait, honestly.
The over/under for the Cardinals next year is 5.5. I mean, take the under.
Hammer it.
Take
Slam
the
it.
under. Slam the under.
Their
Not
roster
betting advice.
Their roster is talentless.
I mean, there are only two teams that I'm looking at right now, and I'm looking at BetMGM because it was the first link that came up. But there are two teams with 5.5 win totals, and that's the lowest of the entire season. And those are the Arizona Cardinals and the Houston Texans. And I mean, I feel certain about the Cardinals, like basically certain about that situation. But I'm praying that there's another team that rises up and is way worse. Who could it be? The Commanders?
What? Who fall? You're
Yeah.
saying who fall?
Who leapfrogged them for first overall? That's what I want to know. Who are going to be the worst teams in the NFL next year?
The Bucks might be really bad.
The Bucks might be really bad.
I mean, did you see that video of the Kyle Trask Baker Mayfield
I
QB
did.
comp that they were throwing out? They were throwing absolute ducks.
Yeah.
They could be bad. They could be pretty bad.
The Commanders, but I mean,
it depends on how well the Sam Howell experiment works, but they also have they also have a safety net, Jacoby Brissett, who will probably give them pretty competent quarterback play. The Panthers, I think will be. I don't think this, but I'm saying in the event that they struggle, maybe, but I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the league. No way.
Yeah.
The Texans probably.
The Texans are the other team that has.
I would say the Texans, Bucks, Cardinals.
Texans, Bucks are 6.5. Colts 6.5.
The Rams might be bad.
The Rams too.
Yeah, the Rams have the potential to be pretty bad.
Well, that would be beautiful if
I still don't think the Bears are going to be that good either, though.
I agree.
Maybe not the worst team in the league, but they're not going to be that good either. There's still a long way, I think, from competitiveness, despite the good gains I think they made in the draft and by getting DJ Moore in the first overall pick trade. But I still think they'll be bad too.
Yeah, we'll do over-unders at some.
The Titans are going to
the
be
Raiders.
bad.
The Raiders could get first overall if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't play, which we could get into. But that would be just please don't give it to the Cardinals.
Titans, I think, are a sleeper for worst team in the league.
That's true.
They drafted Skoronski, which I think was the right thing for their offensive line, but their offensive line is awful. They have an aging Ryan Tannehill, an unplayable Malik Willis, and Will Levis.
Yeah.
And so if they just decide to go out with Levis and see what they have,
and they have no receivers.
They have no receivers.
I mean, that was. Again, just talk about
the Treylon Burks for AJ Brown trade literally got their GM fired.
As it should have.
Right. Look, I'm just like they are.
He took
Caleb Farley.
Caleb Farley, who was very good coming out of Virginia Tech, but had horrible injury issues. Couldn't put it together. They took a flyer on him. Then they took Malik Willis. That didn't work out. What about that tackle, Isaiah
Wilson?
Isaiah Wilson didn't do their due diligence on him.
Did not play.
I mean, if poor guy seems to struggle, but didn't do their due diligence on him. Like, I mean, come on. So, anyway, I let us pray that the Cardinals don't get rewarded for this. All right, guys, going to read some IMs, and then we're going to get out of here today. Antifa Lockhart, Caleb Williams is going to Chicago, and Carolina gets second worst, and Arizona loses their first because unlike the garbage fifth-place league in the NHL, that might have consequences. Oh, the tanking, perhaps, but they need a smoking gun. Like, the only reason that the Dolphins were penalized for tampering, they weren't even penalized for tanking. They weren't, because that's in the midst of litigation right now. So they were penalized for tampering, not tanking. It's really hard to get a team on tanking. And if the Dolphins can't get it, when you have Brian Flores coming out and saying, like, that Stephen Ross tried to pay me off to get me to lose games, then it's going to be difficult to prove this just when they cut a player.
Or what the Texans did last year.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that honestly might have saved them that final game.
Because of Lovey, yeah, absolutely.
Because as much as the thing about the NFL is it's really different than other teams that are trying to tank. Like in other leagues, there's just less opportunity to prove yourself on the field. You have 17 games, and so a lot of guys are playing for their next job with urgency that you can't replicate when you're playing when it's much easier to tank in 82 games in the NBA.
And it's a little bit more transparent and visible because the draft order corresponds directly to win-loss record, whereas there's a lottery for the NBA. So I think it's also like it's you can tell when guys like Lovie Smith are actually like fighting against it, when the Texans are clearly, when ownership clearly wants something that the coach who knows that he's about to get shit canned does not want.
Yeah.
So I also think there are those tensions, because at the end of the day, I think front offices and ownership are happy to tank. I don't think coaches or players are.
No. And also, like, unlike in the NBA, when you're a coach in the NFL and you have a horrible record, for the most part, you never get another opportunity.
Right.
I mean, unless you're Lovie Smith, but he was brought in to tank. Like and
he's a vet. Like he's a veteran coach.
I mean,
he's been around forever.
Had Brian Flores gone through with that and had been that bad, there's a great chance he would have never gotten another coaching gig in the NFL.
100%.
I mean, we're seeing it with Steve Wilkes right now.
Yeah.
Like, set up to fail. So the coaches try really hard. Tom Lofink, happy Wednesday. In rugby, the Saracens won the English League and Munster won the league that the team I support play in, both on Saturday. In other news, the Men's Rugby World Cup starts in 100 days. Would it be okay for me to call in to talk about it? Of course. Also, if Wales stalwarts could stop retiring from Wales, that would be great. Also, in reference to the rugby IM on the Majority Report last week, that was clearly aimed at me. Thank you, Emma, for speaking in my defense. I really appreciate it. No problem. And you can call in on Monday when we're back on our regular schedule. I already read that one. Johnny Tamale, what do you guys think of the theory of Brady wanting to play for the Raiders as an owner with Jimmy G being injured and sucking? Yeah, I mean, that was a part of the collusion case with the Dolphins, is that Brady was trying to force his way out of Tampa. That's why he retired the first time. That didn't work. The reason it didn't work is because Brian Flores sued, and Brady was named as like high profile quarterback or whatever in the lawsuit. They didn't name him by name, but that Flores was brought onto a yacht with probably Brady and allegedly, and Stephen Ross, and that was a part of. Or no, that was the tanking part. Sorry. Brady and Sean Payton were supposed to go to Miami. That's what they wanted to make happen. And it did not happen. So Brady was considering being a part of ownership while being a player. He wanted to buy a little piece of the Miami Dolphins. So that's where this is coming from. I just can't see Brady unretiring for a second time.
I mean, that'd be insane.
And
I could never believe a word this guy says ever again, which I already didn't.
But the reason he wanted to go to Miami is because Miami might have the best roster in the NFL without the quarterback.
100%.
Like, it's up there.
Now, especially with Ramsey,
I mean, the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Dolphins that might be the best three rosters in football, honestly, putting aside the quarterback. But that was why Brady wanted to go there. I mean, that's why he went to the Bucs. He went to a place where it was like ready for him to go and win. So the Raiders are look bad. So I can't see why he would want to do that. 91 and Route 5. The Brewers are now trying to extort Milwaukee and Wisconsin for renovations to their 23-year-old retractable roof stadium just years after the Bucs successfully did it to replace their 30-year-old arena. Yeah. Sandy Martin, this is why I support the CHL and AHL. The AHL literally has a great player talent base, and the minimum salary is sadly only $332K due to lack of ticket sales. Well, good job, Sandy Martin. The AHL is a fun league to follow. Dan from Columbus, I guess the Knights' success may be a use case against me, but Las Vegas seems like a weird sports city to me. Like, who's going to Vegas for a baseball game? I thought point of the city was for gambling, drinking, and general debauchery, not seeing pitch clock balls. Yeah, I mean, good point, Dan, but I think what the idea is that there will be a lot of tourists that come in, and maybe they'll go see a game in the afternoon and see a show at night or that kind of deal. So this is just like a way for the A's to paper over their shitty ticket sales. Tamur from the 5. Also, heads up, the CFL season is starting up next week. The Toronto Argonauts are looking to repeat as Grey Cup champions. It's great football overall and should at least tide you guys over until your preferred football starts again in the fall. Tamur from the 5. I don't know if I would agree that it's great football. I have trouble even watching college football. Because I just think the quality is such a huge drop-off. But
There is.
I'll check it out.
I think there are some slightly different rules in the CFL.
There are,
which are kind
yeah.
of fun, but
Yeah.
for the Grey Cup.
I'll check it out. All right, and the final I am of the day. El Conipcion, my personal prediction is both teams winning road games. Miami goes up 2-1 before the Nuggets take the last 3. Whoa! Miami will scare and win a game they shouldn't with outstanding execution and coaching before Denver learns how to shoot their way out of the mud that Miami will want to drag them into. That is a good prediction. I thought about this. There's a chance that Miami wins game 1 because of how long the Nuggets have not been playing. I worry about that for the Panthers as well in the Stanley Cup Finals. But anyway, those are our predictions, guys. We will see you on Monday. Bye-bye.